Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the October 24th, 2024 Raleigh Housing Authority board meeting. When you want to
okay. Eric Braun,
here,
Valerie Crutchfield, here. Susan Ellinger is not on. Leah Fawn, Bill Swint is not on. Ryan Morris,
Here.
Jessica,
Here.
Greg Warren,
here.
Joe Whitehouse is not on, and Joanna Lindstead is not on yet. She was going to join. We do have a quorum.
All right, do we have any visitors? Yeah, visitors.
Jacqueline Williams and Charles Francis is on the Zoom. Hunter Snellings is a developer, and Jonathan Zimmerman is on. I believe that's it.
First order of business today, the annual meeting. Are you gonna take us away on that? All right. Article 3, Section 3 of the Raleigh Housing Authority bylaws, RHA holds its meeting for the purpose of electing officers. The meeting is held jointly with the Raleigh Housing Authority board during that Raleigh Housing Authority regular board meeting. At this point, I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Ashley Lomers Johnson to conduct the annual meeting.
Good evening. At this time, the annual meeting for the Housing Authority of the City of Columbus board is in session. At this point, I declare the offices of chair and vice chair to be vacant. The floor is now open for nominations for the chair, for the office of chair. Any nominations?
I nominate Eric Braun as chair. Can we get
Eric,
a second?
Eric Warren.
any other nominations? Hearing none, is there a motion to close the nomination?
So moved.
A motion to close. So move. Second it.
Greg moved and Arnie seconded. It has been moved and properly seconded that the nominations be closed. All in favor of the nominations being closed signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carried. All in favor of Eric Braun being elected chair signify by saying aye.
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 If not unanimous, those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Congratulations, Eric Braun, new chair of the Raleigh Housing Authority Board. At this point, the floor is open for the nominations for the office of vice chair. Can we hear nominations for this?
I nominate Arnie Morris.
I'll second. Sorry,
Morris
I'm
has
late.
been nominated. Is there a second?
This is Yolanda. I'll second.
So the nomination has been seconded. Any other nominations? Is there a motion to close nominations? Motion? Anyone?
I so moved.
Second.
Motion to close nominations for vice chair, second.
Second.
Motion seconded. It has been moved and properly seconded that the nominations be closed. All in favor of nominations being closed signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no, say nay. Motion carries. All in favor of Arnie Morris being elected vice chair signify by saying aye.
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 If not, those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Congratulations, Arnie Morris, as vice chair. The chair will now continue with the next, agenda item.
Thank you. Next agenda item is public comment. Do we have anyone, attending the meeting that wishes to take advantage of the opportunity? Seeing none, we'll move on. We're moving on to the consent agenda, and we've got several items that are, under, new business that we're gonna move to, the consent agenda and make sure I get these right. Resolution number 57, 58, 59, 60, 62, and 63.
Yes.
We're gonna move this to the consent agenda and act on them, on one motion. Subject to anybody having, if there's any items on any of those resolutions or any of the other items within the consent agenda that anyone has questions about, let me know, and then we'll pull it back off consent and have a, and talk about it and act on it separately. So, are there any items, questions or items that anyone wants to pull and discuss from the consent agenda?
Could you repeat which resolutions those are removing? The numbers?
Yes, 57,
Mhm.
58, 59, 60, 62, and 63.
Okay, thank you.
So hearing none, it sounds like there are no questions. All items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and may be enacted by one motion and seconded. If a commissioner requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda, it will be done and considered as a separate item. The vote will be as a roll call vote. So let's have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve. Arnie, seconded.
Okay, Eric Ron,
Yes.
Valerie Crutchfield,
Yes.
Susan Ellender,
Yes.
Arnie Morris,
Yes.
Bahati Batisia,
Yes.
Yolanda Winstead.
Yes.
That agenda's been adopted.
Right, move, next item on the agenda is, report of the board chair. Other than saying thank you for the vote of confidence, I look forward to working with everyone, continuing to work with them. Arnie, you just can't get away from us. But appreciate the support. With that, we'll move on to the report of the board secretary.
Thank you. We go to, the second slide, on the slide deck. It's just a list of topics that we're gonna cover today. I want to give an update on the relocation, at Heritage Park. I'm gonna talk about the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Then also, want to talk about the project-based voucher, program, some updates and, matters that the board, should be aware of about the program, since it is a new program. And then I want to talk about three, Raleigh Housing Authority, City of Raleigh, collaborations, and the topic. We have invited, Jonathan Zimmerman, to, talk, about, the topic of small area fair market rents that we have to, implement. And so he will go through, some, items related to small area fair market rents, and will be available for questions, on, the SAFMRs. So first of all, Heritage Park relocation, congratulations to Laura McCain. The team is now fully staffed. We have a manager and two, specialists. The relocation team, reports to Laura McCain. Relocation at this point is ahead of schedule or ahead of, expectations. There are only 58 remaining, households, as of yesterday. The relocation destinations so far have included, project-based vouchers with the most, most of the folks who have moved choosing project-based voucher properties. And then 11 in our own properties, public housing and RAD. And then 11 have utilized vouchers to lease up. This is something that I reported on before. After completing the survey, there are 28 of the households at Heritage Park that have expressed a desire to return. So that's 28, so not a significant number. So the next topic that I want to talk about is some items related to the Housing Choice Voucher Program. The voucher utilization, and this is not budget utilization, voucher utilization now stands at 99.5%. For context, North Carolina average is 81%, and housing authorities throughout the United States, the average is 86%. I would venture to guess that our program is now has the highest utilization in the state of North Carolina and among the highest in the nation. Part of this, the reason for that high utilization growth from the beginning of last year is that we have housed a substantial number of families just in the past 12 months, 486 families. Currently, monthly attrition is between 20 and 25 households. As far as budget utilization is concerned, which has been a priority of HUD's for a while, we are projected to be at 107% for 2024. It is important to note that this doesn't mean that we have overspent the budget, including the handheld reserves. We will not be in shortfall during this year. The 107% for the year represents roughly 43.9 million, and our total funding available to us is just over 44 million. So we're within that cap.
And Ashley, can I ask a question? Where were we? We're at 99.5%. So, you know, you've been here 2.5 years. So where were we?
1.5 years.
Lots
So most of your salary.
Where were we in?
So at the beginning of last year, we were at 91.5, and we were skirting to the 92% mark. So I really want to congratulate the Housing Choice Voucher folks for doing tremendous work. I've never seen this level of production on the eligibility side, getting people a house. So great team. I do want to mention the issue of recertifications. You may recall that we received a audit finding last year, and we're in the middle of audits. We're just getting feedback from the auditor. Nothing definite yet, but I do want to point out that just in terms of production, we've had significant production increase over the last year, which means we're heading in the right direction to eventually have all of our recertifications done in a timely way. So last year, we processed and approved 3,600 annual recertifications, and including initial certifications. This year, we're on track to do 4,483 recertifications, so a significant, over 800 more in the year, which means that eventually catch up and get to timely. So congratulations to the folks at HCP. I will be talking about the public housing program at the next meeting, but there's good news in the areas that we have focused on there also. Any questions about the HCV program? Nobody's surprised about the 95, oh, 99%. So I want to talk about the project-based voucher program. This is a new program. We all have learned a number of things. Some of the lessons have been hard for developers who are concerned about timeliness of things being delivered, environmental reviews being done in a timely way, and subsidy layering reviews that have not been completed. So lots of things to learn. So we created the program in the fall of 2023. We are authorized to project-based about 1,200 of our vouchers. The value of a project-based voucher over a 20-year contract is just over $300,000 if we assume an inflation rate annually. So if we think about what that value of project-based vouchers is to leverage in the community, leverage affordable housing. Over 20 years, that's 368 million of housing dollars that come through the housing authorities that will be used to support our own development, as well as development of numerous other partners. If we include some of the tenant protection vouchers that we are expecting, that's about $500 million over 5 years of money that will come through the housing authority to its own properties and the properties of its partners. So in other words, this is an extremely valuable resource for projects in our area, which also has some implications. So we allocate project-based vouchers as directed by regulations. We have to allocate them competitively through requests for proposals, except for our own units. We don't have to go through a competitive process. Housing authorities used to have to go through kind of a fake competitive process and then allocate it. They took that away under HOTMA. But housing authorities can piggyback on another entity's competitive process. So for example, in the case of Wake County Housing Authority, if they want to allocate vouchers but don't have the capacity to do so, if we issue an RFP, they can then use our competitive allocations as a basis for their own allocations. That doesn't seem so far out, but we can also, and housing authorities can also allocate project-based vouchers on other competitive state, local, or federal competitive awards for for affordable housing. For example, if the county of Wake allocates money to a project for gap financing and it's allocating it competitively, we can then use that process to allocate project-based vouchers to projects selected in that process. Now, we are not contemplating at this point doing that because we have policies, a strategic plan, and goals that we want to reach, which might not be exactly the same goals as another entity, but those are the options that are available to us. So one of the tricky things about doing this is because this is so incredibly valuable for a development project, we have to be careful not to show any favoritism in the process, because if there's an appearance of something like that, of favoritism, people, folks who don't get an allocation can complain or express discontent, and we don't want that So, so what are some of the pitfalls here? And I had a conversation with Eric Braun about this and the need maybe for the board to hear more about the process and the program. So again, the value of this resource may tempt some to try to influence the process. We get phone calls, we get, maybe a phone call from an elected official about a project. And those situations are tricky for us to be involved in. So, developers may, and they do call elected officials to assist them or to make contact and to get us into meetings where those projects are discussed. People, call staff, they may call commissioners. I don't know if you've been called about any projects, and sometimes they have a project coming up and they have a timeline, and they want that timeline to be met, and so we get requests along that. They want to know about the number of vouchers issued at hand. Some of them want to advocate for specific projects or project types. And the point here for us and for me is that it is imperative for staff to have the support to protect the integrity of the process. And that means saying no to an elected official or an important person in the community that might have consequences. But we want to make sure that we keep the process, clear of any appearance of impropriety. And I just jotted down some things here that and it may expand or have to adjust this. So in general, my direction to staff and to myself is to avoid meeting about specific projects, especially close to an RFP process. Now, initially, we contacted developers to talk to them about project basing, to educate them about it. So a lot of folks have been interested, but it gets, it may become an issue if we're talking to somebody about a specific project and their project gets funded and somebody else's project doesn't, who didn't have a meeting, didn't have that perceived influence. So it's best in around project-based vouchers to refer interested parties who may have a project to talk to me or the project-based voucher administrator, rather than to other staff, so that we can have a clear and consistent message. So our project-based voucher administrator, so she will not, if she gets a call, she will not meet with elected officials or talk to them. She'll refer them to me, but generally I should be that point of contact. After an RFP is issued, discussions about a specific project can only be held with a project-based voucher administrator. In the first round, I got several emails about a specific project, or not about a specific project. And my question was, is this about the RFP? Does it have anything? No, it doesn't have anything to the RFP. And I asked this several times. And then when I met with the individual, it was about the RFP. So, so I'm just trying to make sure that we don't get into a situation where we don't speak with one voice. When we issue an RFP, we invite questions that folks may have, and we provide the answers in writing and post it on our website so that everybody has access to the same information. So anyway, those are just some comments that I wanted to make. I don't know if you have any more questions about.
Yeah, I did. You have, I think you have selection criteria that you publish, is that right? And are those, and I'm just thinking about the low-income housing tax credit process, and the state funds that. For the most part, there's no judgment per se, it's all very specific. And I didn't know if that's the case with your selection process, and whether or not you're transparent after the decisions are made, either how people rated or evaluated, for example, the state housing finance agency, which, obviously is under a lot of pressure, political or otherwise, to
Right.
on the awards. And I think they have, over the years, really put a firewall against influence on that process. I'm just wondering if there's any subjectivity, but also whether or not you're transparent with the results of your evaluation after you've completed it.
So we do have criteria that we list and make clear in the RFP, and so people know, what the particular item will be, what the total value might be for that item compared to other criteria. And those criteria are based on what we have in our housing choice voucher administrative plan. So the board adopted that portion of the plan last year, and so we do have criteria, and then we use that and make awards. Now, we do not make the results and scores available publicly, but folks who participate or anyone can request that, and then we are obligated to provide that.
And would you assert that there's any subjectivity in your criteria that you challenge? Or is it pretty much a rote process?
I wouldn't say that, we do have a panel, it's scored by a panel, so it's, so we don't, partly to iron out all of, the potential for bias or potential for, subjectivity, but, that's the process. I'm sure that when I look at an application, I, may bring, my perspective on seeing something. Let's say the issue is property management. How do we look at property management? We don't have detailed criteria of what we look at. I'm looking at Jennifer about that, but that's something we want to make sure that entities have good project management and the vouchers will be used. So, that would be one criteria. And so, anyway, I don't know if I can say anything more, but.
I'm just wondering, again, I'm kind of comparing to the housing finance agency. The housing finance agency makes all applications available to the general public if you request them, as well as the ratings. And so I would just encourage you to think about whether or not there's if you want to have any avoidance, any improprieties, I think having an open process as much as possible is advisable.
Agreed. So we can talk about that maybe as an item.
The overall issue for us is there's an internal process that staff follows, and the criteria that's how they're evaluated. And we may get approached by developers or elected officials or anyone. And if they approach any of us and want to talk about project-based vouchers, the best course of action is to refer them to Ashley. And just to be clear, the board has no direct influence over. We don't see what gets submitted to you all. We don't weigh in on that at all. That's purely staff-driven decision, and so we don't have any influence over it other than to authorize the process and to say we're going to do it. So anyway, because it's new and it's actually did a good job publicizing it, there's a lot of interest in it now, and the community's so interested in developing more affordable housing. These are very valuable, and so we want to make sure we treat everybody fairly, give everybody that is interested a fair shot at taking advantage of them, and again, to avoid any question about whether or not it was a fair process.
And so sometimes, I may rub somebody the wrong way by saying something about, to avoid the appearance of impropriety, and so you might get that information from a different angle, but I just wanted to.
And how many have we issued so far? We've had one round, is that?
Yes. 180 units? Did we award that many?
We have some are, in the final processes. We're waiting on subsidy layer reviews and everything. So that process hasn't finalized yet.
Do
So
we have,
two of the things that have slowed things down unexpectedly, but we didn't plan on this, is the environmental reviews on some of the projects, and, it's a capacity issue in the city, to do that. And then the other is the subsidy layering review, which is, we rely on the applicants to provide that information as soon as possible so that we can move it on to HUD. And then headquarters have to do a final review, and then we get it back. And there's, significant frustration over the length of time that it takes, because, when it gets time to close on the project and we don't have subsidy layering review, that has an impact. So those impacts are serious, and so we will, when we do the next RFP, we will, emphasize timeline to the applicants, so that they know that there may be delays, because we don't have control of the head office, we don't have control of the head office, to headquarters.
and the other thing, just to be clear to the public, is up until this first RFP, we were not doing these.
No.
This is a new tool that the housing authority is putting out to the community to help facilitate more affordable housing opportunities, and for people for different types of housing that the housing authority may not have, may not handle itself. So I'm sure we'll get more efficient as we do it more, but also this is a new process, and so we're excited about it, and it's a good way to get, to help the housing authority, help more people and leverage our resources and work collaboratively with the community. So we appreciate the hard work that you all are doing.
Yeah, so we are, to us, it's a one mechanism to create partnerships to share the load of developing, and then providing housing for people who are extremely low income. Without vouchers, nobody can really provide housing to people who can only pay $10.
So what happens, I know we have they get issued, and then we ultimately have the contract for 20 years or some period of time. Is there a feedback loop to make sure that the communities are living up to their obligations, during the process? I mean, if a property the management started to go downhill or something might happen, do we have a way to influence that? Or
We can, let's say, for example, if units remain vacant, and we can reduce the number of vouchers to a project. So that's something that we're allowed to do under the contract.
Annual inspections, right?
All of the units are subject to biannual inspections. So we encourage all landlords and ourselves to inspect annually, but we biannual, and so we can make sure that that the units, obviously, we are obligated to make sure that the units meets standards, the new standards that Inspire. And then if our clients, project-based voucher clients, have concerns, they can also talk to us if they, and then we can do an inspection or something. So we have that.
okay, great, thank you.
Okay, the last topic that I am speaking personally on is RHA and City of Raleigh collaborations. The recent issue around the move, the relocation of the amphitheater and the closing of South Street more specifically South Street, put us in some conflict with city staff, and it might be the thought that we're not really moving forward and collaborating and working with the city. We are working on very important initiatives, some which we're jointly funding. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the development of a joint housing funders application. And it's done in other parts of the country, so that instead of somebody completing a PVV application, and then application from the county and from the city, we have initiated a conversation, just having one application that an entity can complete that meet the criteria and requirements of all the funders. So we expect that that in the second half of next year, that maybe we will have a process and an agreed upon application. So we're working with the city as well as the county on this process. Another collaboration that we're engaged in is the Reconnecting Communities grant issued by funded by the Department of Transportation. So there are two grants, a planning grant and an implementation grant. These grants are designed to address the effects of urban renewal, especially on communities of color. The City of Raleigh, Diggs Park Conservancy, and the Housing Authority are sharing the grant writing costs. So we have shared the services the city has to write the grant on our behalf. The planning grant has been submitted, application has been submitted. The implementation grants are really the big source of money where cities have received, around 100 or more than $100 million. So if we're successful, that's probably the region in terms of dollar amounts that we can expect if we're successful. And one of the potential benefits of a grant like that will be Heritage Park in relation to the potentially the cloverleaf and fixing all of that, maybe even the utilities. So that's something that we are engaged with in the city, doing funded grant writing contract.
So you said there's a planning grant and then there's implementation grant.
Correct.
So if we applied first for the planning
Planning,
grant, and if we get that, do we then have to go back to a competitive process for the implementation? So you may, I assume it helps because you probably don't get to apply for the implementation if you receive the planning grant. Narrows it down. Well, that sounds great. I hope we can.
Right. So initially, at least, Diggs Park Conservancy was one of the strong, proponents for moving ahead and applying for a grant. And then the last collaboration that we are actively working on right now, we are jointly funding the cost of a consultant. The city is doing the procurement to implement a model of developing mixed income social housing like the one that is used by the Housing Commission of Montgomery County, which is a housing authority in collaboration with local government. Some of you may have seen a now famous New York Times article about public housing, but not to call it that, something to that effect, but is mixed income housing, the market, affordable housing with the market rate component. So just a quote from the RFP that's been issued: by the end of this contract, the city and the housing authority expect to have implementation ready plans for a development entity, a joint structure and an associated mixing funding mechanism, so that it is a very important step for us to work with the city of additional affordable housing development using a different, non-LIHTC model. Great. Okay, and if there are no questions, I'm gonna call on Jonathan Zimmerman. I've known Jonathan for many years. He standing policy analyst for NARA and for FIDA, and one of the most knowledgeable people in the Section 8 program in the country. So Jonathan, take it away.
Ashley, thank you for your kind remarks. Raleigh Housing Authority, thank you for having me. So my topic area is small area fair market rent based payment standards. I've got about 5 different topic areas, but it takes about 6 or 7 minutes to go through them. The first one is, what are small area fair market rents versus fair market rents? And previously, many PHAs based payment standards on a single fair market rent calculated for the entire metropolitan area. This meant that payment standards may have been too low to enable voucher assisted families to rent units in certain areas of opportunity, and may have been higher than market rents in other areas. So under the new approach for small area fair market rents, the payment standard is based on a localized rent for each zip code. The use of SAFMRs in the voucher program is an important tool to promote housing choice, expand access to rental units in low poverty areas, and increase utilization in the voucher program. Second, why is Raleigh Housing Authority required by HUD to implement SAFMR-based payment standards? HUD has a regulation that requires designation of new SAFMR areas every 5 years as new data becomes available. HUD's basis for determining areas is if they meet all 5 of the following selection criterion. 1, that at least 2,500 vouchers are under lease in the metro FMR area. 2, at least 20% of the standard quality rental stock within that area are located in zip codes where the SAFMR value is more than 110% of the FMR value. 3, at least 25% of families with vouchers live in concentrated low-income areas. 4, the percentage of renters with vouchers living in concentrated low-income areas relative to the percentage of all renters within the area, over the entire metro area, that is, exceeds 155%. And 5, last, that the vacancy rate for the metro area is greater than 4%. Once a metropolitan area is designated by HUD as an SAFMR area, it remains so permanently. There were 41 metropolitan areas designated in this round by HUD under a notice, which included Raleigh, North Carolina, MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area. In those 41 areas, there are 263 PHAs for this round. The previous round was in 2018, and in that there were 192 PHAs in 29 metro areas that implemented these. The third topic area is what are the potential impacts for RHA's current and future participants? RHA's SAFMR-based payment standards will result in an expansion of housing opportunities in areas where currently 25% of voucher-assisted households reside. Currently, 8.4% of voucher-assisted households pay more than 30% of their monthly adjusted income towards their rent share and tenant-paid utilities. After 12 months at 100% of the 2025 small area FMRs for payment standards, this figure is projected based on my analysis using HUD's payment standard tool that looked at all the tenant-based voucher-assisted households, would be reduced from 8.4% currently to just 6.7% of families paying more than 30% of their income towards their rent housing costs. Both of those figures I just cited are well below the national average of 28%. RHA will employ what's called a hold harmless or a no reduction policy, which results in using the existing higher payment standard rather than the lower one, if that's the case, as long as the family receives voucher assistance in that HAP assisted unit. This policy protects existing families from housing cost burdens. Both payment standard increases and decreases take effect as of the effective date of RHA's implementation of SAFMR-based payment standards for new admissions to the program, folks on the program who are relocating with their voucher from one unit to another within your service area, and 3, voucher holders who are porting in to the Raleigh service area. Those 3 transaction types, the increases and decreases take effect as of the effective date of implementation. It is difficult to project where voucher holders will move within any PHA service area, including within Raleigh, but in general, other PHAs with SAFMR-based payment standards over the course of years saw a percentage change from relatively lower cost zip codes to relatively higher cost zip codes, ranging between 0 to 2% annually. The 4th topic is, what are potential impacts on and responses from landlords? The change in methodology used to calculate payment standards means that families with vouchers may now be able to afford units in parts of Raleigh with relatively higher rents. All HAP contracts, housing assistance payment contracts, remain subject to rent reasonableness determinations and tenant affordability requirements, including in areas where payment standards increase. And the last topic is, what are the potential impacts on costs, that is housing assistance payment costs? RHA's projected per unit cost in fiscal year 2025, using 100% of the SAFMR-based payment standard, is projected to increase by 9.1%, 25 over 24. This compares to an annual percentage change of 11.9% from 2023 to 2024. Overall, RHA is projected to make this transition from FMR-based payment standards to SAFMR-based payment standards while continuing to serve the same number of families next year as served this year. And that concludes my report. Happy to take any questions you may have.
So will this result, if the amount that we can pay for rents increases, that may reduce the number of units or vouchers that we can put out in the marketplace?
One would normally think that, but because the change from a single FMR to multiple sub-market based SAFMR payment standards, there is both an increase in certain neighborhoods relative to what you're currently paying, and also a decrease in other neighborhoods relative to what you're currently paying. And so the difference between those two, there's an offset. So the decrease in submarkets where Raleigh's FMR payment standard may have been higher than what was commensurate with the market, that will have some cost savings in those areas. But those savings would be, as I said, limited to new admissions coming on the program, relocations and port-ins, and that the savings from that will get reapplied to allow for that expansion of housing opportunities. And yes, to answer your question, higher per HAP cost in the other remaining neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
But just to, so some of the landlords now know about this, and there's one landlord group that has invited me to a meeting, and this will be the topic. They have concerns about potential lowering the payment standard as a result of the new the small area of fair market rents. One of the things that the board may want to know is that in one zip code, and I don't know how many zip codes there are a lot of zip codes. Jonathan, you may know the number in our area, but in one particular zip code, there are 1,250 vouchers leased up in that one zip code, which represents more than 25% of our total pool of vouchers. So, so that would be a zip code where the housing costs are lower and where we will see, a lower payment standard.
And as I said earlier, to pick up literally where Ashley left off, for all existing families currently residing there, Raleigh's hold harmless or no reduction policy puts a floor underneath them so that they're not adversely affected in any way, shape, or form. They get to continue to benefit from the existing payment standard.
Can you give us a sense in the lower payment standard zip codes, what monthly dollar amount decrease landlords might be looking at?
Yeah, sure. It ranges. I'm not trying to be obtuse. I will answer your question. It ranges. I can give you, if it's all right, a percent, because that's how I have it set up. But the percent could decrease ranging from 3% to 9%. With the majority being 3%, some 6% in the middle, and then a few 9%. And the ones decreasing by 9%, again, just for new folks coming on the program, relocations and port-ins, which is a much smaller percentage of your annual transactions each year, are in the lowest cost zip codes in your service area.
So I'm trying to think through whether this is a dumb question or not, but like if a resident that has a voucher and is situated somewhere, if they decide they want to relocate, if they relocate to another area in the city, that's when that could impact them. If they voluntarily decided, hey, I want to move from this location, so it could make it harder for them to find. I guess, do we need to inform our residents, voucher holders, that this could impact their ability to?
Yeah, I think, we will be and should be communicating with our households that could happen. So let's say I'm living in zip code X and there's another unit down the road and still in zip code X. The payment standard for that new unit might be lower if in that zip code of fair market rent. They are protected, as Jonathan said, if they remain in that unit, but if they move to another unit in that zip code, it'll affect them if the SAFMR is lower. And so there are a number of these scenarios that will play out. In the most part, it might be safe to stay in the unit if the cost difference is significant.
So we have staff that are gonna help residents understand that and navigate to make sure they don't get caught up in some administrative issue.
I just test my knowledge on this. Can voucher holders move into an house that exceeds the payment standard and just in the end pay more than 30% of their income?
They may, so initially, what they are allowed to pay under the program is 40% of their adjusted income on rent. The program is modeled at the 30%, but we can't allow them to select a unit where they pay more than 40%. But once they are in the program and say the landlord raises the rent, they may pay more than 40%. How about if somebody moves to a different unit? they are then subject to that 40% standard.
They have to, they go back to the same divorce.
But, you know, as Jonathan indicated, you know, our percentage of folks who pay a higher percentage of their income on rent compared to the nation is, you know, significantly lower. Which is a benefit to our residents.
Any other questions? Right, hearing none.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.
are you still recording?
Reporting.
Reporting.
No, that's the entire report.
So the next item on the agenda is the Real Estate Investment Committee Chair. We have a report.
Yeah, I'll try to make this brief. First, we haven't met recently with a formal meeting, but there have been conversations back and forth with a number of members of the board, and Ashley in Kenya is leading up the effort, particularly focused on Heritage Park. That's really been our main focus. It goes without saying that this is a complicated transaction with closing of South Street, South Dawson Street intersection, sewer and water lines, discussions, a lot of moving parts here that make for a challenge to come up with a site plan at this point in time that we think we can live with. But the focus on, I think, many of these discussions and work Kenya's doing is focusing on the first two phases of the development, which are on the east side and west side of the property. Kenya now has a plan to go forward with a tax credit application for a 9% transaction in January. And this would be a seniors development, relatively modest in size. Also occurring right now is a rezoning process that's about ready to get kicked off, and that will require some public engagement. First phase is, I understand from Kenya, is that the first two phases do not require a rezoning, but as we move further east, where there'll be more density, more height, we require rezoning. Moving forward with that rezoning request, there'll be public meetings that will be required, and so I think that there'll be community engagement efforts that we built upon our prior work, consulting with residents and the like. So I think that obviously there are members of the board here who do have significant real estate development experience, and the challenge, I think, for Kenya is to and seek the advice of the board members, but that we don't want to get involved in kind of focusing on every small detail of the development. And I think she also wants clarity in Ashley and Kenya want clarity as to what comes before the board and what doesn't for board approvals. So I think the inclination now is that there will not be an RHA board meeting in November, but there will be one in December. And we expect that the staff will come back with some sort of authorizing resolution seeking funding from the Housing Finance Agency and probably Wake County and Raleigh to help make the first phases of that development possible. So before we get to that meeting, there will be conversations with staff and staff, Ashley and Kenya in particular, and board members who are interested in this, who have something to advise. Whether or not that's a full real estate investment committee meeting is yet to be determined. Some of these may be just conversation updates. I think that I'm guessing that Kenya is probably going to schedule meetings with those that are involved in that, interested in that process on maybe a bi-weekly basis or something like that to keep us apprised. So that's kind of where we are. I'd be happy to answer questions. And Kenya and Ashley, do you want to add anything or clarify anything summarized here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fundamental plan has not changed. Like when we talk about the site plan, I don't think that there's been anything that's changed fundamentally from the goals that we were trying to achieve in terms of the overall programming. It's still mixed use, mixed income. The first phase is a tax credit phase, as originally presented in the initial concept plan. Some of the things that have changed are more around some of the details, the nuances related to some of the things that Greg has highlighted and pointed out. But I think around unit count, around usage, it's still, I would say, fundamentally unchanged from what was approved as part of the initial concept plan. And I will say, in terms of how the agreement is written, I take that back, how the original initial concept plan resolution was written, we would only come back when there was an entitlement, which is what we would be presenting in December.
So are we going to, is part of that December action going to be authorizing rezoning? Or where are we in that process?
So the rezoning technically we were authorized that we were able to.
Okay.
That
Okay, I just couldn't.
and the real estate investment committee. And it's only through the entire plan.
Do we have a time? I'm sorry if I missed, I might be speaking past you. Do we know when we're gonna file a rezoning or what kind of target time frame?
After the board meeting.
Okay, so that's,
And that's something that's already been, conversations we've already been having. We had the initial concept meeting for the rezoning,
Okay.
already with the city. And so we've been really working really closely with Morningstar.
well, good.
So I'm having a little trouble understanding you guys. It's a little garbly. So at the December meeting, what exactly is coming back to the board? Because I feel like, haven't we already authorized you guys to kind of move forward with all of this stuff? So I'm a little confused about what we're authorizing in December.
I think, I'll take a shot at this and can clarify this, but I think that, the real estate investment committee or some board members, interested board members will have an opportunity to see in more detail what the initial site plan is and plan for submitting a tax credit application in July for the first phases of this. So I think that will be a broad authorization to go forward seeking funding from Housing Finance Agency, as well as from Wake County, City of Raleigh as required, as needed. And I don't know if we'll be talking in that resolution about subsequent phases, but I think there is a desire to submit a 4% application for later phases later on in the year for more development activity. So the authorizing staff to go forward with the first initial phases of the development, which I think would be just on phase 1 of the site plan that has been circulated recently.
You know, we just, given that we're gonna have an election, we are having an election, you know, we, subject to the Morningstar votes and everything, I assume that we're gonna process that rezoning in the first of the year, start moving that forward, because that's kind of the magic opportunity for zoning cases, is when there's a new council and they aren't quite talking about to the next election, which is only, 2 years off. Want to take advantage of that while we can as well. Any other questions on that topic? Anything you all want to share with us on it? Anything you have?
No, that's it.
All right, that brings us to commissioner comments. Are there any comments from any commissioners they'd like to share with the group? Hearing none, do we have any old business? Doesn't sound like it, so we'll move on to new business, and hopefully I've got these resolutions right. The first one up is resolution 56. Take it away.
All right, this resolution is the preliminary approval for up to 34,185,000 in multifamily housing revenue bonds for Moore Square Apartments. Per state statute, RHA is the issuer for these bonds. They are non-recourse bonds, so if the developer were to default on these bonds, RHA is not financially responsible. Moore Square Apartments is a 160-unit family property located near 319 East Martin Street in downtown Raleigh. The developer is Harmony Housing Affordable Development. The property includes 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units serving residents between 30% to 80% AMI, with 24 of the units serving residents at 30% AMI. The contract rents will range from $568 to $2,258. The property is also required to accept housing choice vouchers due to a requirement of the 4% tax credits. The total project is approximately $62 million, including funding from bonds, 4% tax credits, deferred developer fee, and funds from the city of Raleigh and Wake County. Also, the developer has entered into an option for a long-term ground lease with the city of Raleigh. Amenities will include an exercise room, playground, community room, community center, and covered picnic area. The developer is willing to include a preference in their tenant selection plan for RHA residents displaced due to redevelopment. This has been reviewed by RHA's legal counsel with no exceptions, and I would recommend approval. Staff with Harmony Housing is on the call if there are any questions.
Do you have any questions regarding resolution number 56? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval?
We have a
This is
motion.
Yolanda, our second.
We have a motion and a second.
Okay, Eric Braun,
Yes.
Valerie Crutchfield. Susan Ellinger,
Yes.
Rod Matisia,
Yes.
Greg Warren,
Yes.
Yolanda Winston.
Yes.
Resolution number 56 has been adopted.
That brings us to resolution 61, public housing flat rent change charges.
Good evening. What I bring before you is an annual activity that we do because it is a HUD requirement. The Quality Housing and Work Responsibility Act of 1998 established flat rents for public housing units. Flat rents act as the ceiling rent for public housing residents, and each family is provided the option to choose between a flat rent at least annually and rent that is based upon their household's income, 30% of their household's income. Public housing flat rents are based on bedroom size, location, the market rate for non-subsidized units in the vicinity of the public housing unit. HUD requires agencies to analyze flat rents annually and to make necessary revisions required within 90 days of the new FMR effective date. We've talked a lot about FMRs tonight, that they were published on August 14th of 2024 with an effective date of October 1st of 2024. Public housing's FMRs will be 80% of the FMR minus utility allowances. There are currently 54 families who are paying a flat rent. The spreadsheet that was presented in the board book has a clerical error that I want to notate. On the Birchwood row house townhome, the 3-bedroom, the corrected 2025 flat rent for that will be $1,548 versus what is in the book. So I want that to be notated in tonight's presentation. There's a change of 32.60%. I'm available to answer any of your questions, but I do recommend approval.
Are there any questions regarding resolution number 61? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve. This is Bahati.
I second. This is Susan.
Motion a second, Glenn?
All right, Eric Braun,
Yes.
Valerie Crutchfield,
Yes.
Susan Ellinger. Muted, but this is a yeah. Bahati Matisia,
Yes.
Greg Warren,
Yes.
Yolanda Winston,
Yes.
Resolution number 61 has been adopted.
That brings us to resolution number 64.
Yes, so resolution number 64 is a lease agreement for the St. Saviour's Center Outreach Center, also the diaper train located at 616 and 618 Tucker Street. Those are two stone-style buildings adjacent to the Glenwood Towers center that we have there. So we have a current commercial lease agreement that is going from November of 2022 through the end of this month, October 31st, 2024. These buildings were originally constructed in 1923 and operated as the Ravenscroft School. And we have a lease specifically with the diaper train, and then they have sublets with a Haitian church, with Wake Relief, and with Meals on Wheels Friendship Cafe. And we have been partnering with the diaper train since 2002. They provide services specifically for our Glenwood Towers and Carriage House senior population, although they do provide some services to some of our other communities as well. Now, because of the age of the buildings, both us and the leasee have invested a significant amount of funds into the premises, and they continue to decline in the functionality and the quality of the space. So we have evaluated the state of these buildings, and we have agreed to complete repairs up to a certain limit that will provide a more practical operating environment for our leaseholders. These repairs will be up to about $25,000 in value, and they will help address the water intrusion issues, a door opener malfunction, and some bathroom fixtures on the first floor. We evaluated the services provided to the residents and did a survey with our residents out there to see if there was an interest in continuing to offer these spaces to these leasees. And there is. Now, it's not going to be feasible for us to bring the buildings up to a full fix for all of the items that need repair over there. However, we are able to bring up the repairs to what we're thinking will be approximately 6 months for these leaseholders to continue to lease the space while they find other premises elsewhere. We want to continue to offer them the services. However, they will not necessarily be able to be held on site in these buildings, just based on the condition and the age of these buildings that we're having these issues at. So while these leasees and subleasees are looking for alternative premises, we will be going forward to extend the lease for 6 months. We will not be charging them the rent during this 6-month period, and then they will be going to a month-to-month lease if needed at the end of that period, which will expire in April of 2025. We value their partnership, and we want to extend that in some sort of form or fashion, but it will most likely be looking different moving forward based on these buildings. I am happy to answer questions and would recommend approval.
Are there any questions regarding resolution number 64?
I'm curious, how did RHA end up with this property?
I don't have an answer to that. It's not here.
I was gonna say that a long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, was this when Glenwood Towers was built, you expect, and because it's adjacent?
It used to be administrative offices for RHA, but I don't know.
The HIC had an office.
Certainly have no idea. I guess somebody can look at the deed and find out.
I think we acquired it from the Episcopal, it was an Episcopalian, but I mean, I started in 92, and then that's where our community service was working out of, so. We've had it a while.
But it's time to figure out what to do with it. Well, I'm sure the folks that are there appreciate the authority working with them and trying to help them transition to better location, so.
How much was the rent before? Because we're offering it free now.
$500 a month.
We won't put too much of a dent in our operations.
I think because of the damage to the building, they have.
I think they stopped paying in July. April would be the months without it.
So we're all working collectively to try to get them in a better situation and still serve the community. And so,
Right.
well, with that, I'll move approval of resolution number 64.
I'll second.
We have a motion second, Glenn?
Right, Eric Cron,
Yes.
Valerie Crutchfield,
Yes.
Susan Ellinger,
Yes.
Bonnie Mishia.
I think I have to abstain from this one because I heard Meals on Wheels mentioned, and I'm also on the board of directors for Meals on Wheels. I don't know if it's close enough of a relationship with the diaper train for me to need to abstain. If I abstain, would that still give us a quorum for voting?
Yeah, it's yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Greg
I think I'll abstain just to be careful.
Warren,
Yes.
Yolanda Winstead,
Yes.
resolution number 64 has been adopted.
Are there any other, I asked for commissioner comments. Does anybody else have anything they want to add? If not, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Good night, everyone.